Hey, Facebook. My name is Steve Sanson, president of Veterans in Politics International. And I'm in Carson City. Just came from the state legislative building and where the Assembly and the Senate make laws. And I figured I'll just come over to the Nevada Supreme Court building here in Carson City. Not the one in Vegas, the original one here in our state capitol, to deliver a message. Now, what happens if I tell you that back in 1992, there was a prosecutor that hid evidence, that possibly did some type of jury tampering? This prosecutor is supposed to be an officer of the court. You know, you put your left hand on a Bible and you raise your right hand and you take that oath, and you're not supposed to lie, and you're supposed to deliver justice no matter where it goes, because that's your job, delivering justice. Now, you're supposed to protect the innocent. No matter what they did or didn't do, you're supposed to protect them. And as a prosecutor, you're supposed to protect everybody, because that's your oath, that's your job. But what happened if I tell you that there's a prosecutor that just hid evidence from the court, didn't give the evidence over to opposing counsel, didn't give the evidence to the court? And this prosecutor that's supposed to be the above the frail, this prosecutor caused an innocent man, he's innocent of that crime, an innocent man, to go to prison for murder. And they even had the death penalty on the table. And this prosecutor know that this man was not even in the state of Nevada when this crime was to take place in Clark County, Nevada. This prosecutor made an innocent man spend over 21 years in prison. 21 years in prison. Anybody out there want to do 21 minutes in prison? You don't. Could you imagine doing 21 years in prison for a crime you didn't do? And this prosecutor knew that Fred Steese, the victim, didn't do the murder. And what happens if I tell you that while he's putting this innocent man in prison, the real killer got away with murder? Because they're not looking for the real killer anymore. They got their man, Fred Steese, the innocent man. So the victim family has no justice. The victim's family didn't get the killer of their significant other. The victim's family is left with a cold case. And this prosecutor did it just to have a check mark of a conviction on their record. This prosecutor was a Clark County prosecutor back in '92. And this prosecutor allowed an innocent man to go to prison. Innocent. He didn't do the murder. Innocent. Prosecutor hid evidence. What happens if I told you that even the Supreme Court back in 2017, there was a pardons board made up of every member of the Nevada Supreme Court, also made up of the governor, Brian Sandoval, and also made up of the Attorney General, at that time, Adam Laxalt, that every single person voted to let this innocent man, Fred Steese, go free, except for one, Adam Laxalt. Although the evidence was there, Laxalt still refused. Now, justice? This is not justice, folks. What happens if I tell you that this has been in the news and nobody's really paying attention, and that this prosecutor became a Clark County District Court judge? This prosecutor was never held accountable for his actions. This prosecutor is now the Chief Justice, of our Nevada Supreme Court. Is that justice, folks? Why are we electing this criminal, is what I'm going to call him. Justice Douglas Herndon is a criminal because he hid evidence and allowed one of our Nevada citizens to be incarcerated for 21 years for a murder that he did not commit. They even forced him to sign an Alfred plea so the state wouldn't want to pay money to Fred Steese for wrongful incarceration. But later on, as time went by, the Alfred plea was taken away and they ruled that Fred Steese was innocent of murder. Innocent man who went to prison for murder he did not commit. And the death penalty was on the table. Could you believe that? Our Supreme Court Justice, Chief Douglas Herndon, knowingly put this man behind bars, knowingly that he knew that he didn't do the crime. And we, the voters, some of us very simple-minded, voted for this guy and put him and make him a Supreme Court justice. Now, why am I bringing this up? Let me tell you why. Next year in 2026, this seat is up. This seat is up in 2026. And we need a candidate out there that has the gonads to run for Supreme Court justice. Our state is made up of about, I would say, 16 to 17,000 attorneys we have in this state. 16 to 17,000 attorneys we have in this state. Could I find one of you that have 15 years of practice in law to run against Douglas Herndon, who is, in my opinion, a criminal? And that's me saying it very lightly. I'm sure Fred Steese and the victim's family that was murdered have better choice words than what I'm calling him. I need a candidate out there that would run against Douglas Herndon in 2026 for Nevada Supreme Court. Because justice should mean something, don't you think? Justice should be everything. We live in a land of laws, but we put criminals on the bench. Why is that? Do you know, there was a person that I call a very good friend of mine. I've known him for years. He said to me, he knows that Douglas Herndon put an innocent man behind bars. He knows that Douglas Herndon hid evidence. But he said to me, why do I want to make enemies out of a Supreme Court justice? I am not trying to make enemies out of a Supreme Court justice. I don't have an axe to grind either way. But I can't blindly not say anything about this particular Supreme Court justice who turned away from the law, who knowingly put an innocent man behind bars, incarcerated him for 21 years. And if it was up to Douglas Herndon, this Fred Steese would still be behind bars. Douglas Herndon, I've called you. I've reached out to you because I wanted you to come on the Veterans in Politics talk show. And I wanted you to talk about why you would do something like this. I wanted to talk to you and ask you if you could sleep at night. I wanted to ask you if you were a judge and a prosecutor was before your court and hid evidence from the court, knowingly hid evidence from the court and caused a man to go to prison for 21 years, what would you do? I wanted to ask you if that was your daughter that was incarcerated for 21 years for a crime she didn't commit? How would you feel about our legal system? How would you feel about those prosecutors that knowingly put your daughter in prison for a crime she didn't do? I wanted to ask you all these questions, Chief Justice Douglas Herndon. I wanted to ask you these questions because it's sick to my stomach to know that you are on the Supreme Court for what you did. It is wrong. And you people out there, I want you to understand this, because normally people don't understand anything unless it comes home. What happens if that was your mother, your grandmother, your father, your sister, your uncle, that a prosecutor knowingly hid evidence from the court and had your significant other, your next of kin, somebody you love and care about, be in prison for 21 years of their life, their whole life tossed away? They couldn't have wife, family, kids. They couldn't grow a business. Gone. Because of one person. In this case, it was two. It was Douglas Herndon and William Kephart, who also became a judge. Apparently, these two people just love power. They love power. That's why they're doing what they're doing. They cannot get away with not having power. That's why William Kephart wants to run for Clark County District Attorney, when he was also involved with hiding evidence from the court. This is prosecutorial misconduct. This is a whole bunch of crimes that these two individuals have done. I want you to understand that when you go to the voting booth in 2026. And I want some attorney out there to run against Chief Justice Douglas Herndon. You owe it to yourself. You owe it to the state of Nevada to remove this criminal from the bench. Because if this happened to you, you'd want something done about it. Now, wouldn't you? Now, I got a question out there for Chief Justice Douglas Herndon and William Kephart. How many times have you done this in all your cases under Stu Bell, who was a Clark County District Attorney at the time? I would like all your cases be reviewed, because I tell you this is not an isolated incident. If you're so calm, Douglas Herndon, to get away with this and walk away so quietly and become in the public's eye and run for judge and now Supreme Court and now it's Chief Justice, I have bet you've done this before. I think all your cases should be under review. Every last one of them. That's what I believe. Because you're so calm about this. If I would have done some crap like that, I would have left the prosecutor's office, probably be in private practice. I wouldn't even be in the public's eye. But you're too calm about it. Narcissist? Maybe. You went before the the legislature, and you did that big spiel about justice because you know you have an election coming up. You try to get as many allies as possible. And speaking of that, all you donors out there, do not give your hard-earned money to this criminal. All you political parties out there, party leaders, organizers, unions, police, fire, do not support this criminal. Because I tell you what, if it was one of your brothers in arms that this prosecutor, who's now the Chief Justice, put behind bars for 21 years for a crime that they didn't commit, and allow the real criminal, the real murderer, to walk amongst us without giving the family of the deceased any justice, that's a crime all by itself. Now, I'm here in Carson City, and I'm here at the Supreme Court. because I want you to know how serious this is. Ozzie Fumo tried to push it. Cliff Marchek tried to push it. But it's getting nowhere. It's like you voters don't care. In the legal community, almost everybody knows about this. Almost everybody knows Douglas Herndon hid evidence as a prosecutor in the Fred Steese case, costing the man 21 years of his life in prison, costing taxpayers $1.3 million to do a defense and prosecute the case because Fred Steese didn't have any money. So he had a public defender and he had the prosecutor. $1.3 million. And by the way, he also sued the state and he received $1.4 million in wrongful conviction and another $765,000 to incarcerate him in a maximum security prison because he was a murderer. And the place that he went, it wasn't a picnic in the park. You got murderers in there. You got rapists in there. You got people that want to take your life every day. You got to join a gang in prison just to be protected so you can survive the next day. This is a place that they were trying to kill you. This is a place that your constitutional rights were out the window. This is where Douglas Herndon put Fred Steese. Douglas Herndon, I have another question for you. How long you think you can last in a maximum security prison? I'd probably give you a week, if that. And that's in solitary confinement, because I don't think you could last in the general public. Douglas Herndon, you should be ashamed of yourself. Really ashamed of yourself. And look, your daughter even helped promote a bill to give every person monetary dollars for every year that they're wrongfully incarcerated. Even your daughter was trying to fix your problem for you. That's sad. Well, folks, I hope you understand what I'm saying. I hope I got everything down. If you need to get a hold of me, I'm at 702-283-8088. My name is Steve Sanson, President of Veterans in Politics International. I have no dog in this race. I have never even met Fred Steese, to be honest with you. But I've read a lot of court documents. I've talked to a lot of people that was on that pardons boards in 2017. And believe me when I tell you, Douglas Herndon is guilty as hell. We need to hold him accountable. And all you legislators out there, if you're listening to this, we're just right across the street from the legislative building, that any prosecutor, this is from Stephanie Phillips, by the way, that any prosecutor that knowingly hide evidence from the court should be immediately disbarred by the state of Nevada. Immediately disbarred. No second chances. Because if you could take away a man's livelihood and take away his freedom, you do not deserve to have a bar license to practice law in this state or any state within our United States. This is Steve Sanson, President of Veterans in Politics, President of Nevada Veterans Association. Until next time.